With increasing frequency, it seems that more and more sports have the ability to stop the action and to go and review what has just happened from every angle, from every camera lens, to see whether somebody was safe or out, whether there was a penalty or a foul or not, whether score or point should be awarded or taken away. And it's put an emphasis on what has just happened, as if somehow we can change it. And many of us spend a lot of time, perhaps too much time, dwelling on the past, the recent past, the distant past. It's as if it is in a loop that just keeps repeating itself. And usually it tends to focus on not the great things, but the bad things, the worst things that others have said to us or done to us, or the worst things that we have done. And even though we may have confessed them, done penance for them, been absolved of them, for some reason, we still feel as if we're walking around with a big scarlet letter advertising that I'm a sinner. And yet our scriptures on this fifth Sunday of Lent tell us that we need not focus on the past, because that will never help us get where we're going to. The past is unchangeable. What happened there is baked in. We can't undo it. We can't redo it. And when we spend too much time living in the past, reflecting on bad things and grudges and resentments from days long ago, it makes it very hard to live in the present, and even harder to live for the future. And that's where the scriptures today step in. In the first reading, we heard Isaiah speaking for God, saying, forget the things that have happened. I'm going to do something new. He was preparing his people for the coming of his son. In the same way, St. Paul told the Ephesians that we need to stop focusing on what lies behind us and start focusing on what lies ahead of us, because that is where we're going to find heaven and happiness. It is in our future. It is not in our past. Jesus came to save us from our sins and to free us from the things of the past that we can't let go, redo, or undo. And that's what he was offering to the woman caught in the adultery at the beginning of John chapter 8. With all those rocks in their hands, it looks like the Pharisees really want to kill the woman. Their greater desire is to kill Jesus and the woman. They would like to kill two birds with one stone, quite literally. Jesus has been seen by the Pharisees as a very controversial figure, because the Pharisees use God's law to go around and put big black check marks on people's records of sin. This one is unclean, that one's untouchable, that one's unlovable. They made people feel small. They made them feel far from God and distant from each other. And yet Jesus, to the Pharisees, seemed like an outlaw to the outcast, because he touches lepers. He talks to Samaritans. He hangs out with tax collectors and prostitutes. They thought that Jesus was keeping some bad company, and that made him all those things: unlovable, untouchable, and unclean. And that's why they want to see if they can trap him with God's law about what should happen to this woman who they claim was caught in the very act of committing adultery. And they are quoting God's law, but not all of it. They're quoting the book of Leviticus, the laws God gave to Moses. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, but what does it say? If a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress should be put to death. So the Pharisees have a problem on their hands. This says that it takes two to tango, and both parties to the crime, both who committed the sin, should be paying the price. Where's the man? For all we know, he probably has one of those rocks ready to throw it at that lady. He's committed a sin. He is not there to answer for it. But Jesus, he understands all of Leviticus chapter 20, which was all about various kinds of penalties for any kind of sin against any of the 10 commandments. And Jesus does not look lightly on adultery. If we look back to Matthew chapter 5 at the Sermon on the Mount, verse 27, what did he say? If a man lusts after someone in his heart, he has committed adultery. So Jesus is a defender of what is truth, what is beautiful, and what is good. But he has come to use God's law to save people rather than to have them condemned to their death. And that is why he has something to explain to these Pharisees that will soon have their rocks falling to the ground instead of hitting that woman and claiming her life. It would really be a bestseller if we could find Jesus' autobiography. But no archaeological dig has ever revealed any word that Jesus wrote. And yet not once but twice in this gospel, John, the gospel writer, has Jesus crouching down in the sand and writing with his finger. But whatever it was, it must have been pretty persuasive, because all of a sudden the rocks were dropped, the men left, and it was just Jesus and the woman standing alone. Has no one condemned you? Where did they go? I would have as a theory, and it's just mine, that Jesus was writing all the sins those men were guilty of and pointing arrows to see which ones applied to whom. And then he said, let the one among you who has not sinned cast the first stone, and that is what caused them to go away, because they realized that they could not judge this poor unfortunate woman when they themselves had done worse things. This is what happens, the throwing of stones, when we decide that we want to, in thought, word, or deed, condemn someone else for a sin they've committed, as if we ourselves are perfect and have done nothing wrong. Jesus told the woman, go, don't sin anymore. He didn't overlook the fact that she had done something wrong. Instead, he forgave her, something the Pharisees were unwilling to do or seemingly incapable of. But then he said something that we don't hear in the gospel today in the very next verse that really shines the light into our darkness. After he told her to go on her way, and it's a different path, one that will not be in the darkness but in the light. What did he tell her? John chapter 8, verse 12. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus had just saved this woman's life. Jesus had saved this woman's soul. He had just forgiven her sins, and then he became the light for her to light the way out of the darkness of a sinful past toward heaven and home and happiness that awaits her in her future. And during Lent and in always, the Lord makes the same offer to us, that instead of worrying about what other people's sins are, Lent is an opportunity to focus on my own and to try to use the disciplines of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, service, sacrifice, and self-denial to overcome and to better resist some of my temptations, so that I can live in that light that God has sent as a beacon to show us the way out of here, the way up, the way that will lead us to where we always wanted to be, a world without sadness, a world without sickness, a world without disease, a world without death. This isn't heaven. Jesus came from heaven to show us the way home that will lead us back to where he is. And so let's take the advice of Isaiah and Paul and so many of others to stop focusing on the past. Rather, leave it. Leave it at the foot of the cross, where the blood and water that flowed from Jesus' side can wash it away. And instead, focus on heaven. And that is something that lies ahead for all of us. And so if this hasn't been a great Lent or a very productive and holy, humble season for us, it's not over yet. There's still 2 weeks to go. But if you're carrying around heavy baggage that you wish you could be parted with, we have the penalty box right over there. We have the penance service coming up this Wednesday night. 10 priests will be here. If you can't remember the last time that you celebrated the sacrament of reconciliation, perhaps that little voice that is our conscience is calling out to us to say, as Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life.